Welcome to Fame and History. If you're into epic stories and legendary figures, you're in the right place. Smash that subscribe button and drop a like so you don't miss a thing. Let's make history together.
The First World War, also called the Great War, was the deadliest conflict that shaped the 20th century. It raged from 1914 to 1918. It involved dozens of countries and millions of soldiers and civilians from across the globe. For many, the war is remembered in black and white photographs, giving it a distant, almost unreal feel. But what happens when we see those same moments in color? Today, we will explore rare colorized photos that bring this monumental war to life and to explore the war's causes, key events, and its impact on soldiers and civilians alike, offering a unique glimpse into the past. These images show us not just soldiers on the front lines, but the faces of the civilians and the everyday moments that defined an entire generation. This war shaped the world in ways that we still feel today. So, let's take a look at how this conflict unfolded, the major events, and its far-reaching consequences. The war didn't start overnight, but built up over decades. The early 20th century was a time of rising tensions. Europe's major powers were locked in a web of alliances and rivalries. Germany, a growing power, sought to challenge Britain's naval dominance and France's influence. Meanwhile, the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires struggled to maintain control over their diverse populations. Nationalism, imperialism, and military alliances were all contributing factors. The spark that ignited the war came on June 28, 1914, when Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, a young Bosnian Serb nationalist. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia, and soon many nations were dragged into the conflict due to military alliances. Germany declared war on Russia and France, while Britain entered the conflict to protect Belgium. What might have been a regional conflict spiraled into a global war, pulling in colonies from Africa, Asia, and beyond. In 1914, many believed the war would be over by Christmas. Germany's plan was to defeat France quickly by invading through Belgium and then turn east to fight Russia. But the war didn't go as planned. The fighting quickly turned into a brutal and unrelenting war of attrition, especially on the Western Front. The front lines were marked by miles of trenches where soldiers faced constant danger from artillery bombardments, machine guns, and gas attacks. The trenches were miserable, filled with mud, rats, and the constant threat of death, and stretched over 400 miles, from the North Sea to Switzerland, defining much of the war. On the Eastern Front, the fighting was more mobile, but just as deadly. Russian forces clashed with Germany and Austria-Hungary in battles that left millions dead or wounded. This conflict was not confined to Europe. It extended to Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Countries like India, Australia, and Canada contributed troops to fight for the British Empire. In Africa, colonial soldiers served under European powers, often facing harsh and challenging conditions. One striking image highlights Senegalese soldiers resting near the Western Front. These troops, recruited from French colonies, shared the same hardships as their European counterparts, but were often overlooked in historical accounts. In the Middle East, the British and their allies engaged the Ottoman Empire in campaigns such as Gallipoli and Mesopotamia. Arab forces, supported by figures like T.E. Lawrence, also fought against Ottoman control, further broadening the scope of the war. The war came to be defined by brutal trench warfare on the Western Front. These trenches stretched for hundreds of miles and became the setting for many of the war's deadliest battles, where neither side could gain a decisive advantage for long periods. One of the most significant battles was the Battle of the Somme in 1916. This battle is infamous for the immense loss of life, with over 1 million men killed or wounded. Although the British suffered tremendous casualties, the Somme marked a turning point in military innovation with the first ever use of tanks in combat, paving the way for modern mechanized warfare. The entry of the United States into World War I in April 1917, after a period of neutrality, brought new momentum to the Allied cause. Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare, which targeted American ships, and the interception of the Zimmermann telegram, a proposal for a German-Mexican alliance, pushed the U.S. into the conflict. By 1918, American forces arrived in Europe in large numbers, playing a decisive role in battles that helped break German resistance, leading to the signing of an armistice on November 11, 1918. Beyond the battlefield, the United States contributed vast industrial and financial resources to the Allies. At home, women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, and citizens supported the war effort through bonds and conservation campaigns. While American casualties were lower compared to European nations, the U.S.'s decisive role in the Allied victory established it as a global power, reshaping its position in international affairs. One powerful image shows soldiers examining the massive crater created by British explosives near Messines, Belgium. This moment reminds us of the extreme measures taken to break through enemy lines and the intensity of the fighting. Life wasn't just difficult for soldiers. Civilians caught in the crossfire endured immense hardships. Entire communities were disrupted, leading to famine and destruction. One poignant image shows an Algerian worker in Noyon, France, after the Germans retreated. Workers from colonies in Africa and Asia also played crucial roles behind the scenes, contributing to the war effort through labor and logistics. By 1918, the war had reached its breaking point. Following the Russian Revolution, Germany moved troops from the Eastern Front to the west, launching a final offensive in March. However, they failed to secure victory before American troops arrived in significant numbers, tilting the balance in favor of the Allies. The war officially ended on November 11, 1918, with the signing of the armistice as the Central Powers, led by Germany, were exhausted and facing internal collapse. In the aftermath, the Treaty of Versailles was signed in 1919, placing significant blame and reparations on Germany, which would have long-lasting effects on the country and the wider European landscape. The treaty imposed heavy reparations on Germany, leading to severe economic strain and political instability that would contribute to the rise of extremist ideologies. The war resulted in the collapse of several empires, including the German, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, and Ottoman empires. New nations were formed, such as Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia, as the map of Europe was redrawn. This reordering of political boundaries caused significant shifts in national identities, often creating tensions that lasted for decades. The war also contributed to the eventual rise of totalitarian regimes, which led to World War II, as the harsh terms of the peace treaty fueled resentment and economic hardship. The Treaty of Versailles failed to establish lasting peace, with many nations dissatisfied with its terms, setting the stage for future conflict. On a global scale, the war shifted the balance of power. The United States emerged as a significant world power, due in part to its economic contributions and the involvement of its military forces. Through supplying resources, weapons, and loans to the Allies, the U.S. strengthened its position economically. The arrival of American troops in 1917 and 1918 played a role in the final stages of the war, contributing to the Allied push toward victory. As Europe faced the aftermath of the war, the United States became increasingly influential in global politics and diplomacy. The U.S. also became a leading voice in the creation of the League of Nations. The League of Nations was established in an attempt to prevent future conflicts, though its inability to maintain peace would eventually contribute to the outbreak of World War II. The social and cultural consequences were also profound. The war brought about major changes in societies, from the role of women in the workforce to the widespread psychological trauma faced by soldiers, which would later be recognized as shell shock, or PTSD. The war also left a legacy of technological advances, including tanks, aircraft, and chemical weapons, which would shape future conflicts. The devastation of the war also accelerated changes in art, literature, and philosophy, reflecting the disillusionment felt by many in its aftermath. The First World War reshaped the world in profound ways. It brought about the collapse of empires and led to the rise of new ideologies. The instability that followed in the interwar years eventually contributed to the outbreak of World War II just 2 decades later. The global political landscape shifted, with emerging powers and fading empires trying to navigate a new and uncertain world order. The legacy of the First World War continues to shape our history, from the political borders it altered to the way we view warfare. We hope this exploration of World War I through rare color photographs has provided you with a deeper understanding of the war's far-reaching effects. The legacy of World War I reminds us of the profound cost of conflict and the importance of striving for peace. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to sharing more historical insights with you in the future.